didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just passing by the living room, a glass of water in hand, the light dim and shadows stretching long and sharp across the hallway. But then I heard it. My mother's voice, low and sharp, slicing through the air with a cruelty that made my breath hitch. "Well, of course he's my favorite," she scoffed, voice dripping with disdain. "I mean, really, look at what he's accomplished compared to her. What has she ever done that's worth mentioning?" The glass slipped from my fingers, crystal shattering against the hardwood, water splashing across my bare feet, but I barely heard it, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," my father chuckled, voice warm and indulgent. "She tries. Bless her heart. But you're right. He's always been more, better, never enough." I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth, teeth sinking into my palm to keep from making a sound, but my mother wasn't done. Not yet, not even close. Honestly, I just don't understand how she turned out so plain, she sighed, voice laced with disappointment. "We did everything right, didn't we?" My father hummed, almost fondly. "It's not your fault," he said softly. "She's just a bit of a disappointment, isn't she?" Disappointment. The word was a slap, sharp and stinging, echoing in my skull. I stumbled back, heels clicking against the hardwood, breath shallow and ragged, vision swimming. Because it wasn't just the words, it was the way they said it. Like it was obvious, like it was fact. Like I wasn't even worth hiding it from. "She should really just be grateful we keep her around," my mother added, voice syrupy sweet. God knows she'd never make it on her own. Grateful. Not loved. Not enough. I pressed my back against the wall, cool and smooth beneath my fingers, breath hitching, chest aching, because the truth was raw and brutal and undeniable. I wasn't the favorite. I was barely even family. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers digging into the quilt, eyes fixed on the cracks in the ceiling. The words wouldn't stop echoing, sharp and cruel, slashing through the silence like knives. Disappointment. Not enough. Like I was the family's dirty little secret. Better left unseen, unheard, unnoticed. It wasn't the first time they'd made it clear who the favorite was. The signs were everywhere. Small at first, almost easy to ignore, like tiny splinters you couldn't quite pull out. Christmases spent unwrapping gift cards and socks while my brother tore into game consoles and designer watches. Birthday dinners where my cake was store-bought and slathered in waxy frosting, while his came from the bakery downtown. Fresh strawberries and gold leaf and candles that didn't drip wax. The way my mother's eyes would light up every time he talked about his job, his new apartment, his fiancée. How my father would laugh, warm and indulgent, every time my brother made a joke, even when it was at my expense. Meanwhile, my stories, my achievements were met with polite nods and tight smiles, eyes already strained to the door, the clock, anywhere but me. "That's, nice, dear," my mother would say, voice light and distracted, fingers already swiping through her phone. Nice. Not impressive, not enough. The worst part was the praise. How it always seemed to flow in one direction, warm and endless and easy. My brother's grades were outstanding. Mine were acceptable. His job in finance was promising, and my work at a non-profit was cute. Even his mistakes were excused. "He's just under a lot of pressure," my father would sigh. As if getting fired twice in 1 year was some sort of noble sacrifice. Just grateful we keep her around. I squeezed my eyes shut, breath hitching, chest aching with something dark and raw. It wasn't just what they said, it was how easily they said it, like it was a fact they had grown comfortable with. I tried harder, God, I tried. Spent nights hunched over textbooks, eyes burning, hands cramping from hours of writing and chasing grades and trophies and scholarships like lifelines. Graduated with honors, top of my class, a medal around my neck, and a speech clutched in our trembling hands, but they'd barely even clapped. Eyes already strained at my brother in the crowd, face glowing with pride. "We're so proud of you," my father had said, to him, not me, and shouldn't have hurt. Not after all these years, not when I was used to it. But it did. God, it did. I learned to keep quiet, to smile and nod, to laugh when they laughed, to swallow the bitterness and push it down, down, down. I learned to play the part. The obedient daughter, the one who never complained, never made waves, never asked for too much, because asking only ever ended in disappointment, in soft sighs and empty promises and eyes that flickered with pity. "You should be more like your brother," they'd say. So often it became a mantra, a warning, a knife between my ribs. I bit my tongue so hard it bled, smiled so wide my cheeks ached, hands clenched beneath the table. I stopped bringing home my report cards and stopped mentioning my promotions, my new apartment, my life outside of theirs, because it didn't matter. Not to them, not when it wasn't him. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the silence. The way they'd look right through me. Eyes glazed and distant, smiles tight and strained. The way they never noticed when I stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped asking for permission to exist. The way they'd hang his photos on every wall, prom photos, graduation photos, wedding photos, while mine gathered dust in drawers and boxes in the attic. I wasn't just invisible. I was expendable. And the more I realized it, the harder it got to breathe, to pretend that the cracks weren't growing deeper, wider, hungrier. I found the letters by accident, crumpled and yellowed, buried beneath a pile of old tax forms in my mother's office. Life insurance policies, dated 26 years ago, 2 years before I was born. Policies with my brother's name on every line and beneficiary, emergency contact, heir. My name wasn't even on them. Like I didn't exist. Then there was the trust fund. 6 figures, accumulating interest for years, set up when my brother was born. Untouchable until his 25th birthday. I flipped through page after page, heart pounding, breath hitching, hands trembling. Not a single mention of me. Not even as a backup, not even in fine print. And beneath it all, the will. 30 pages, typed and signed, and names and numbers and clauses scrawled in neat little rows. The house, the cars, the vacation cabin upstate, everything in his name. All I'd get was a modest inheritance. A phrase that felt like salt in an open wound. I stumbled back, papers clutched to my chest, knees buckling, breath hitching, because it wasn't just favoritism. It was a plan, a future, a life they'd built without me in it. They didn't just love him more, they'd written me out entirely. He wasn't just the favorite, he was the heir, the golden child, the son who could do no wrong. And I was just a placeholder. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt, I was angry. Angry that I'd spent years begging for scraps of affection, for pats on the head and hollow smiles and words that meant nothing. Angry that I'd wasted so much time trying to be enough for people who'd never see me as anything more than second place. I wasn't just an afterthought. I was disposable. And I was done playing second place. Done fighting for a family that had already made their choice, long before I even knew there was a battle. I stared at the papers for a long time, fingers trembling, breath hitching, eyes stinging. The words blurred together, clauses and signatures and neat little numbers, all spelling out the same raw and brutal truth. I wasn't just less. I was nothing. They hadn't just chosen him over me. They'd never even considered me. The drive back home was a blur of headlights and darkness, fingers tight around the steering wheel, chest aching with every mile. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were numb, my breath shallow, and my heartbeat a dull roar in my ears. The lights were still on in the living room. Warm and inviting, silhouettes shifting behind the curtains. I hesitated for half a heartbeat, fingers clenched around the car keys, throat tight and raw. But then I took a breath, deep and steady, and forced my legs to move. They looked up when I opened the door, my father's newspaper rustling, my mother's fingers pausing on the remote. My brother was there too, sprawled on the couch, eyes flicking to me, and then back to his phone, bored and indifferent. For a moment, the only sound was the tick of the clock above the mantel, loud and accusing. Then my mother smiled, bright and brittle, eyes flicking to the stack of papers clutched in my arms. "Oh, you're back," she said, voice light and warm, like I hadn't just uncovered the years of secrets and lies buried in her office. "We didn't expect you so soon. Did you eat anything? There's leftovers in the—" I threw the papers down on the coffee table, ink smudging beneath my fingers, breath hitching, chest aching, her voice cut off, eyes widening, smile faltering. My father's paper crinkled between his hands, knuckles white, mouth tightening. My brother raised an eyebrow, finally tearing his eyes from his phone, lips quirking with something like amusement. What's all this?" My mother stammered, fingers fluttering to her throat, eyes darting to my father. "Sweetheart, Stop!" I snapped, voice cracking like a whip, sharp and raw and trembling. "Just stop. I know. About the trust fund, about the will, about the insurance policies with his name on every single line. I know." The silence was deafening, thick and heavy, pressing in from all sides. My mother's face drained of color, lips parting, eyes glistening. My father's jaw clenched, throat bobbing, eyes dark and stormy. My brother snorted, crossing his arms, eyes flicking to our parents with a smirk. Well, at least she finally figured it out, he drawled, voice lazy and smug. Took you long enough. My breath hitched, fingers digging into my palms, nails biting into flesh. My mother's eyes flashed, hands trembling, voice rising. "That's enough!" she snapped, eyes flicking to my brother, mouth tight. "This isn't the time!" "Oh, please," he scoffed, rolling his eyes. "She's been acting like some tragic victim for years. It's pathetic. Maybe if she stopped blaming everyone else for her failures." "Failures?" I bit out, voice cracking, eyes stinging. "I worked 2 jobs through college because you said we couldn't afford tuition, but somehow you found enough to set up a 6-figure trust fund for him. You bought him a new car when he got his first job, but you couldn't even lend me $100 when I couldn't make rent. So please, explain to me how I'm the failure." My mother's lips trembled, tears glistening, voice cracking. Sweetheart, we didn't mean..." "Don't!" I cut her off, voice shaking, fingers digging into my palms. "Don't call me that, just admit it. You never wanted me. I was just..." "What, a backup plan? A safety net in case something happened to your golden child?" My father's hand slammed down on the table, papers scattering, eyes flashing with something dark and furious. "That's enough," he growled, voice hard and commanding. "We did what we had to. What was best for the family. Your brother has always been more important," I spat, eyes stinging, voice rising. "Just say it. Come on, just admit it. He was always more important, right? And I was just the spare, the backup, the mistake you had to tolerate." The silence was suffocating, my mother's sobs muffled behind trembling fingers, my father's eyes dark and cold, fists clenching and unclenching on the table. My brother smirked, arms crossed, eyes glinting with something cruel. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," he sneered, voice mocking. "It's not our fault you were never supposed to be here anyway." The words were a slap, sharp and stinging, echoing in my skull. I stumbled back, breath hitching, chest aching. What does that mean?" I choked, voice cracking. My brother scoffed, rolling his eyes. "God, you really don't get it, do you?" he sneered. "You were an accident, a mistake. They didn't even want another kid. They just didn't have the heart to get rid of you, but hey, at least they kept you around, right? You should be grateful." My mother's sob broke the silence, raw and desperate, hands covering her mouth, eyes wide and glistening. My father's face was stone, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor, guilt bleeding through every line of his face. And that was the truth, wasn't it? The truth they couldn't bring themselves to say, but didn't need to. I took a breath, shaky and ragged, hands trembling, chest aching. Then I turned, heels clicking against the hardwood, eyes fixed straight ahead, throat tight. My mother's voice broke behind me, cracked and raw and desperate. "Please, wait, we can explain," she sobbed, voice rising, hands reaching. I didn't look back. I've heard enough. I didn't stop when she called my name, didn't hesitate when her voice cracked on a sob, didn't glance back at the house, the lights, the memories that felt more like ghosts. I slammed the door behind me, chest heaving, eyes stinging, fingers numb around the car keys, because it was over. Finally, brutally, completely over. And maybe it hurt. God, maybe it hurt like hell. But for the first time, the pain felt clean, like tearing out a knife that had been festering in the wound for years. Because I might not have been enough for them. Might never be enough. But I was done trying to be. I booked the plane ticket that night, fingers trembling on the keyboard, breath shallow and ragged. One way, no forwarding address, no return date, no promises. I stared at the confirmation email for a long time, at the dates and times and unfamiliar city names, at the empty suitcase waiting on the bed. It was terrifying. God, maybe it hurt like hell. But it was also freedom, cold and clean and brutal. But leaving wasn't the end of everything. In a way, it was the start. The apartment was small, 3rd floor of a walk-up with windows that rattled in the wind, paint peeling at the corners, and neighbors who slammed doors at odd hours. But it was mine. No more family dinners where I had to fake smiles and laugh at my brother's stories. No more lectures from my father about connections and networking and how I wasn't living up to my potential. No more hollow apologies from my mother, eyes flitting to her phone, fingers twitching to answer texts. The first week was rough, burning through my savings on takeout and bus fare, furniture limited to a mattress on the floor, and a thrift store lamp that flickered every time I turned it on. The silence was overwhelming. No TV murmuring from the living room, no footsteps on the stairs, no voices calling from the kitchen. But it was a good kind of quiet. A clean break. I got a part-time job at a bookstore down the street. Shelves crammed with paperbacks, smell of coffee drifting from the cafe in the corner. It didn't pay much, barely enough for rent and groceries, but the owner was kind and the work was steady. Nights were spent bent over my laptop, fingers aching, eyes burning, LinkedIn open in one tab, college applications in another. I applied for online classes, communications and marketing and digital design, courses I could afford, with what was left of my savings. There were moments, of course. God, there were. Nights when the silence got too heavy, when the walls closed in, when the urge to call them almost choked me, when I missed my mother's cooking and my father's bourbon-soaked laughter, the familiarity of the old house, even my brother's smug grin. But those moments passed, like storm clouds breaking, rain clearing, air crisp and clean in the aftermath. And slowly, God, so slowly it got better. The apartment started to feel less like a temporary refuge, and more like home. Thrift store pillows, postcards tacked to the wall, plants that somehow stayed alive on the windowsill. The paychecks came steady, enough for groceries that weren't instant noodles, enough to buy the pair of boots I'd been eyeing in the store window for weeks. But the call came eventually. Of course it did. My phone buzzed late one night, number familiar but unexpected. I hesitated, thumb hovering, breath shallow, chest tight. Then I answered. "Hey," my brother slurred. Voice thick and lazy, words slurred, breath heavy. "So, Mom and Dad told you, huh?" I didn't answer. Breath shallow, fingers tight around the phone, jaw clenched. He scoffed, harsh and hollow. "God, you're so dramatic. It's not like they disowned you or anything. You're the one who left." "I didn't have a choice," I bit out, voice flat and cold. "Not after everything." "Oh, please," he sneered. "You've always been so sensitive. Mom and Dad just did what they had to. Besides, it's not like you're missing out on much." There was something off in his voice, sharp and brittle, lacking the smugness that usually dripped from every word. I fronted, breath hitching, fingers twitching. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice low and wary. He snorted, dry and humorless. "Oh, you didn't hear?" he drawled. "The company's bankrupt. Dad's been using his savings to keep it afloat, but it's over. The trust fund? Gone. That vacation house they love so much? Sold. So congratulations. You're not missing out on anything except a whole lot of debt." I stared at the wall, chest hollow, fingers numb, breath shallow. "You're lying," I whispered, voice cracking. "Oh, I wish I was," he scoffed. "God, you have no idea. Dad's furious. Blames me, of course, like I asked him to be an idiot with money. Mom's been crying nonstop. It's a mess." The words sank in slowly, heavy and cold and brutal. The golden child, the perfect family, the heir to the empire. It was all gone, crumbled to dust in the lies and debts they'd never crawl out from under. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous, didn't feel bitter or hollow or aching. I just felt sorry for them, for him, for the years I'd spent begging for scraps of affection, for pats on the head and hollow words that had never meant anything. I took a breath, deep and steady, shoulders loosening, jaw unclenching. That's rough," I said, a voice low and even. "I hope it works out for you." He scoffed, sharp and bitter. "Right, whatever, like you care." And maybe I didn't. God, maybe I didn't. But I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. The next morning I woke up to sunlight slanting through the curtains. Air crisp and clean, birds chirping outside the window. My phone was blessedly silent. No missed calls, no voicemails, no names I didn't want to see. I made coffee, 2 sugars, just the way I liked it, no one to wrinkle their nose or comment on my caffeine intake. Sat by the window, laptop warm in my lap, job listings and college courses pulled up, fingers steady on the keys. And it wasn't perfect. God, it wasn't even close. The future was still uncertain, rent was still due at the end of the month, and the emptiness in my chest hadn't completely gone away. But it was mine. The silence was mine. The decisions were mine. The mistakes were mine, and for the first time that was enough, because I might not have been enough for them, might never be enough, but I was done trying to be. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself for once. It's understanding that love shouldn't feel like a battle for scraps of affection, or a test you're destined to fail. Staying with people who make you question your worth isn't loyalty. It's self-betrayal. There's a certain kind of freedom in leaving, cold and terrifying, but real. It's realizing that you don't have to keep earning a place at a table where you are never truly welcome. You don't owe anyone your silence or your suffering, no matter who they are. Sometimes the only way to find peace is to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love that doesn't come with strings attached. It's people who see you, who choose you, who make you feel like you're enough just as you are. And sometimes, the hardest thing is accepting that the people you were born to don't always become that family. You might never get the apology you deserve. They might never admit how much they hurt you, but their version of the story doesn't matter. You know the truth. And sometimes, that has to be enough. In the end, walking away wasn't about hating them. It was about loving yourself enough to leave. Because you might not have been enough for them, might never be enough, but you are enough for you. And that's all that really matters. But the real question is, how long will you keep fighting to belong somewhere you were never truly wanted?